The Suzuki Swift was Suzuki's subcompact offering that was marketed all across the world under several names and badges, included in North America. This one has been set up for autocrosses and hill climbs, and today I get to drive it. 1994 Suzuki Swift GT. Proof anything can be a race car if you really believe in yourself. I miss Suzuki in the American market. It's not just the fact that they made fun and weird cars that no one cared about and rebadges of other mid-sized trucks, but for a time they produced cheap small cars that were reliable for not just themselves, but for multiple GM brands. The Suzuki Swift was one of those cars. Most people associate this car with its Geo variant, the Metro. While cheap, it was brilliantly efficient thanks to its frugal 3-cylinder engine and impressive light weight. And the occasional Simpsons joke. But the Swift was essentially the same car, but it was available with options not available with the Geo model. That includes a sporty model known as either the GTI or GT, depending on the model year. The Swift is the American name for the second generation of the Suzuki Cultus, what this car was known in its home market of Japan. The first generation was initially sold by Chevrolet first in 1984 as the Chevrolet Sprint. The following year, the Suzuki model was introduced, the Forza. A Pontiac model, known as the Firefly, was launched in Canada as well. That model was supposed to be sold alongside the Forza and the Sprint in the States, but that never came to fruition. The Swift name, however, would be used in Australia and New Zealand for the Suzuki models there, and that's the name that would be used when the second generation would launch in America in 1989. While the first generation Cultus and its variants were only available as either a 3 or 5-door hatchback, the second generation added a sedan and convertible models to the lineup. Most models would get the 1-liter G10 3-cylinder, which produced a measly 52 horsepower and 56 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, that seems quite bad, but then you remember that these things weighed between 1,499 and 2,006 pounds. And that helped translate to a 43 city, 51 highway miles per gallon per the updated 2007 EPA ratings. But these are the cars that you mentioned, and every boomer would go, "Those are tiny little cars, but you get 60 miles per gallon. You can't get that in today's cars, not even in a Prius." Which, yeah, is often wrong. But like I said, that's mostly due to the light weight of these cars. Would I want to get in an accident in one of these cars? No. But car buying shouldn't necessarily come down to whether or not you win in an accident. Other engines include a choice of 2 4-bangers. The typical optional engine was the 1.3-liter G13BA single overhead cam, or the engine in the GTI and GT models, the 1.3-liter G13B dual overhead cam 4-cylinder. The G13B produces a 101 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque at 6,500 and 5,000 RPM. And redline runs between 7,400 and 7,600 RPMs. Another big change for the G13B over the other two engines was the fact that it's an interference engine, while the others are not. Notable features of the G13B include the aluminum block and cylinder head, forged steel crank and connected rods, and cast aluminum pistons. Overall, the engine had a compression ratio of 10:1. For the mid-cycle refresh in 1992, the former GTI, now known as GT since 1990 thanks to Volkswagen winning a trademark settlement, received larger sway bars and a solid camshaft to go along with new smoothed-out styling. Now, normally I'd start going into the drive impressions here, but this is where this video is going to deviate because, yeah, this isn't your normal Suzuki Swift or Geo Metro. This car has been built to take on autocrosses and hill climbs. Of course, the interior is mostly stripped and has a full cage. The factory seat has been replaced with a Kirky one, and it now has a Momo Monte Carlo steering wheel with an NRG quick release. The current owner, Mark, admits the interior was kind of a mess when he got the car, such as the gauges and wire and just being rat's nests, and the geometry of the cage is suboptimal. He's a taller gentleman like myself, so the A-post down bar kinda impedes visibility. But it's the fact that the halo bar makes it bend directly over your head, and that's the most worrying. Clearance-wise, it's not good, and a good bump without a helmet, and you're gonna have a good knot on your head. Let alone if you're in an accident. And yeah, the gauges. He said when he bought this car, nothing was straight and everything was just kind of haphazardly installed in the dash. The oil pressure gauge was a mechanical unit and the plastic oil line leaked constantly on the floor. So of course he replaced it with a nicer electronic Bosch gauge. When he got the car, the tach was just kind of did whatever it wanted, so he's since replaced it with an autometer tach and hasn't had an issue since. The previous owner did rebuild the G13B, but kept the modifications mostly bolt-on. There's an aftermarket header that exits out of the passenger side in a stock car style boom tube. The intake and cone filter setup is kind of what Mark describes as janky, but it works. And he does intend on replacing it in the near future with something a little less, boy eraser. And it's got a lightweight flywheel and clutch because race car. It's sitting on KYB struts with H&R lower-end springs and camber plates. Again, the previous owner had kind of slapped stuff together, and Mark had discovered that the left front camber plate was flipped, and as a result, the camber was complete opposite of what it needed to be. And finally, it's sitting on Yokohama Adven AO52s. He eventually wants to go the Hoosier route, but with this being his first Hillclimb car, he kind of wanted to go more of a budget route before spending more on tires, while he learned the ins and outs of the sport. The wheels are just something that matched and fit that he found on Marketplace for cheap. This is a race car through and through. While he'll never take it oval racing, Hillclimb racing is a fun amateur type of motorsport. Of course, its pinnacle is Pikes Peak, but even on the smaller level, it boils down to man and machine versus the road. It's what every enthusiast thinks that they're doing when they're bombing around twisty mountain roads. Only here it's in a controlled environment where you can safely cross the center yellow line without having to worry about somebody in a Ford Edge coming around the corner. And for a car like this, hill climbing is perfect. It's revvy, it's light, and its small footprint fits those tight and twisty roads with ease. And the same could be said about autocrossing. A car like this is perfect for that, easily tossable and just a joy to maneuver. When it came time to film this car, we were kind of limited where we could film and test this car. I didn't want to film it in my normal spot since Troutman, North Carolina's ESC Park entrance happens to be right next to the local police station, and I mean, come on, even though it's registered and insured, it's absolutely asking for some overzealous town cop to pull us over. It's loud, it's kind of sketchy, and it's covered in race car stickers. Even though I'm not, it just looks like you're up to no good driving this on the street. So we chose a place in Statesville that was a little quieter, but that meant we had more of a city drive-in experience than the twisty country roads that I normally test on. But I did have a few spots to open it up on, and a dead mall to do some impromptu skid pad testing. Overall, it's a fun blast. A tad twitchy, but that's mostly due to its toe being a little out of whack since the last event. But the Yokohamas are grippy, and the G13B screamed in delight. Definitely a fun car to use in the setting it was designed for. But driving around on the street? Yeah, this is where I'm starting to show my age. While I would have absolutely dailied something like this in college, it's just too loud and obnoxious to use every day. The stripped interior means that the exhaust noise just resonates inside. The Kirky seat has minimum padding due to the fact that Mark is tall like myself, and needed the space to give his head room for the wonky halo bar above his head. And that cage. While cool to say you're driving around in a caged car, without a helmet, it's absolutely a major risk if you get in an accident. You can pad them all you want, but skulls, brains, and roll bars don't like meeting each other all that well. But aside from my boomerisms about driving a race car on the street, it does its purpose incredibly well, and Mark plans on tweaking and improving it as he takes it to more hill climb events in the southeast this summer. The Suzuki Swift received a major update in 1995 when it got a new rounded jelly bean sheet metal to fit along with a lot of GM's lineup at the time. But despite this quote-unquote second generation, it was still largely the same car underneath, despite what Suzuki and GM would try to tell you. When the Swift ended production after 2001, Suzuki never directly replaced it in America. In Canada, they sold a rebadged Chevrolet Aveo as the Swift Plus, and Mexico would get the new global Swift with its modern style and praised driving dynamics for 2011. But us Americans would miss out on the reborn fun little car. At that time, Suzuki was already exiting the car market in the United States, as years of rebadged GM parts-bin cars and SUVs had diluted the brand to the point that they had to stop the bleeding. As good as cars like the Aereo, the SX4, and the Kizashi were, they were not enough to keep Suzuki alive in the States. And that's a shame, because cars like this Suzuki Swift GT were what made Suzuki so great. They were cheap, they were small, but they were incredibly efficient and with the perfect slow car, fast cars to learn in. So when I see cars like this get new leases on life as stuff like Hillclimb cars, I smile, because it's something that these little cars deserve to be. 1994 Suzuki Swift GT that's been modified to take on autocrosses and hill climbs. You don't have to be fast as long as you have a big smile on your face. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. Huge shout out to my friend Mark at Statesville, North Carolina for letting me drive his new race car for this show. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and happen to be in the Charlotte or Mooresville, North Carolina area, email me with a submission of your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's right, submit your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Don't forget to give the video a like, drop a comment with some feedback. Any sort of interaction with this video really helps small channels like mine grow in the algorithm. Share with all your Suzuki, Swift, and Geo Metro friends. And finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications for more Wookie Drives like these. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.
Swift, όνομα πουλιού. Σύμβολο ελευθερίας. Swift, από τη Suzuki.